to God, the soul is like an object to that in comparison to that super subjective reality. So God can know us, but we cannot know God, at least not by our own power. So that's how the prayers began. Then he says, if he is known through the processes of samadhi, of impersonal type or personal type. So he is known easily or known more difficultly. I think that's a word. More. Sorry, guys. I haven't gotten any sleep in the night. I was having breathing issues. So if you hear like my asthma coming through, don't mind. Some issues there. Yeah, suvigayam and durvigayam. Yeah, suvigayam. Vigayam means to know God. So he is easily known or more difficult to know. Brahman realization is said to be easier, and Bhagavan realization is more difficult, right? Because Bhagavan, in both cases, you have to enter into samadhi, which is itself hard work. And in both cases, reality has to self-reveal itself. And you can't see the sun at night. Only when the sun rises in the sky, then by its own power, the sunshine, you can see it. So God in his Brahman feature or his Bhagavan feature has to self-reveal himself. But you have to do the work of getting into samadhi. After you do that work, which is itself hard work, but after you do that work, then Brahman feature easier to realize. Because Bhagavan is not minding giving that self-disclosing himself as Brahman. But he doesn't like self-disclosing himself as Bhagavan too easily, because that self-disclosure depends on the bhav bhakti, which is rarely obtained. Because bhava, prema, controls God. As Krishna tells Durvas Muni say, hey, your chakra after me, can you retract it? My bad, I shouldn't have try to kill your devotee. Can you retract the chakra? Right? So I can't do anything. I'm not in control. Rasmani, this is your chakra. What do you mean you're not in control? Aham bhakta paradena yaswatantra divadvija. Sadhubhe grasta hridaya bhakta janapriya. Says, I am not independent. He said, I am aham bhakta paradena. I'm completely dependent on my bhakta. I'm not at all independent. Plus, I'm not independent. Because the sadhu is giving everything to me. Even those who are devoted to the sadhu, I'm also attached to them. So this bhakti controls God, so he not give it so easily. So that was said to be more difficult to perceive. Then after that, the prayers go on to say that the swarup of the Lord cannot be ascertained by material faculties. At least material faculties unaided by the spiritual potency. That's how we discussed it. So the swarup of the Lord is different from matter. So then the prayers went on to say, still matter is also God in a sense. Because if you say God is over there and then matter is over here, then God is incomplete. It doesn't have matter. So matter also exists inside God. You can say it is a part of him, but his full presence is not manifest in matter. So just like if you see someone's finger, this is a stupid example, it's a crude example. But if you see someone's finger, like in a picture, so they are there, the finger is part of the body, but their full presence is not manifest in the picture. That's a very crude, silly example, but it helps give a visual. So God is also the world, but not his full presence. So the world can be identified with God, as Krishna himself also identifies the world with himself. Many places in Gita. I'm the taste and water, the ability of man, the intelligence of the intelligence, the heat and fire, et cetera, et cetera. So those are like identity verses, you can call them in the Gita. So Krishna can be identified with the world because the world is a part of him, but his full presence is not manifest in the world. So the identity, as I like to say these days, the identity is asymmetrical. Right? When people say the universe is God, because that's very popular now, people are scared of the 3-letter curse word, God. And Godhead doesn't make sense to people. They say, who is Krishna? He's the Godhead. What does that even mean, the Godhead? I remember sidebar, when I first heard the word Godhead, I saw a picture of Zordon from Power Rangers. It was just like this big floating head, you know? So anyway, people, they say the universe now. The universe gave me this, universe that, universe that. That is also okay. The universe is also God. It has identity with God, but it's asymmetrical because God's full presence isn't manifest in matter. God has qualities that matter doesn't have, right? So that was also mentioned that that the world, although is also God, although it's not part of his Swarup. So after saying that, the last verse we covered, which was verse 31, was saying that the learned persons, they argue about this because they've been bewildered by the Maya Shakti. So the Maya Shakti causes them to lose their own souls. And because of the loss of their own soul, they engage in argumentation, right? Sometimes agreeing, sometimes disagreeing. In Prabhupada's translation, he says, in this way, he creates a situation in this world where they're unable to come to a conclusion about anything. They say, this is real, this is not real. And this is only due to the loss of their own souls, due to the Maya Shakti. So they lose themselves in argumentation. Is this the Swarup of the Lord? Is this not the Swarup of the Lord? Is it inherent? Is it not inherent? Fall, no fall. So many arguments will be there. So this is due to the Maya Shakti. So now verse 32, which is where we left off. So I'm going to share the screen now. The hypothetical question is brought up, or the Purva Paksha is brought up. Actually, Shastra is talking about so many different things. So it's not like these arguments are unfounded. Because the people that are arguing are like the Sankhites and the Mayavadis and the yogis and Korma Mimamsakas and so on. And they all argue on the strength of Shastra. So Shastra is very bewildering because Nigamakalpataru, right? Galitam Palam. This is the third verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Nigamakalpataru Galitam Palam. So that verse is describing that the Nigama means Shastra is Kalpataru. It is a desire tree. So whatever you want, you can get it from Shastra, basically. If you want to be a materialist, Shastra is also telling you how to be materialist also. If you want to be a yogi or Gani, that also mentioned. If you want to be a bhakta, that also mentioned. So people argue on the basis of their conviction in a particular category of Shastra. So it's not like their arguments are just wild speculation. So this verse is addressing that when they argue, they think that they're talking about a different reality, when in fact they're talking about the same reality, but they're talking about the reality that is self-revealed to them according to the path that they have taken. But they think that that is the extent of revelation, so they keep arguing with each other. Right? So this is going on all the time. It's the great fun of the material world. So this is the verse here. Astiti nastiti cha vastu nishtayor ekastayor bhinna viruddha dharmano avekshitam kinchana yoga sankayo samam param ya nukulam brahatat. So there are two parties, namely the theist and the atheist. So asti iti, na asti iti. That's the first, you can see the first verse there. So asti iti means that it exists, and na asti iti means it doesn't exist. That's the literal meaning there. Asti, existence, and na asti, it doesn't exist. And this is referring to the form of the Lord. So by one school, by one path, your God is revealed as Bhagavan. By another path, he's revealed as Brahman. But you say your path is the best path or the only path. Everyone says that actually. My way is the only way. Everyone says. We also say, and we say Gaudiya Math is not the way, ISKCON is the way. Gaudiya Math says Gaudiya Math is the way, ISKCON is not the way. Not those bogus Babajis. We go to the Babajis, they say these guys over there are bogus, we are only the way. So in this way, everyone is saying like this, arguing, na asti, asti iti, na asti iti. So reality is revealed in a certain way according to the path that you've taken. So if you take path of bhakti, This is mentioned Yoga Sankhya. If you take the path of Bhakti Yoga, then God is revealed as existing in his transcendental form. If you take the path of Gyan, mentioned here as Sankhya, God is not revealed with any form. So you say the form does not exist, basically. So anyway, there are two parties, I'm reading the translation, namely the theist and the atheist. The theist who accepts the super soul finds the spiritual cause through mystic yoga. The Sankhya, however, who merely analyzes the material elements, comes to a conclusion of impersonalism and does not accept the supreme cause, whether Bhagavan, Paramatma, or even Brahman. Instead, he is occupied with the superfluous, external activities of material nature. So Prabhupada's translation of this word, Binna Viruddha Dharmanoho. First of all, ekastayur means actually they're studying one subject matter. There's only one reality. What is that one reality? Advaya Gyan. That's the language of the Bhagavatam, non-dual consciousness. So that non-dual conscious reality is revealed as Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan according to the paths of Gyan, Yoga, or Bhakti respectively, right? So Vastu Nishtayor. You understand the Vastu as Brahman if you take the path of Gyan. You understand the Vastu as Paramatma if you take the path of Yoga. And you understand the Vastu as Bhagavan if you take the path of Bhakti, right? That's what we hear. So Ekastayor, it is only one subject matter that is being understood. And honestly speaking, even the world that the scientists are trying to understand, for example, the material world, that is also God. That is his universal form, you can say, through Maya Shakti, but it is also him. It is not different from him because nothing can be different from God in that sense. And they're studying God according to their path. It's a very low path according to us, but it's their path also. So Ekastayor, it is actually one subject matter, Binna Viruddha Dharmana, but they appear to have contradictory qualities or difference is there. Binna, the word Binna means difference. And Viruddha Dharmana means like opposing characteristics. That's how Parvasha said it here. They contradict. Because Brahman doesn't have any qualities, Bhagavan has transcendental qualities. So those are appearing contradictory to us from the finite position. So when people are thinking about spirituality, for example, they realize that God is spirit or transcendence, and this is all matter. So in matter, we see that there's name, form, qualities, activities. So God can't be that, which is true. God isn't material, name, form, and so on, qualities, activities. But they don't have the ability to conceive of spiritual, supernatural name, form, qualities, activities. Because you've never seen. Have you seen? No, we chant Hare Krishna every day, right? But we don't experience it as spiritual. We just tell everyone like that. But we ourselves, don't experience it as such. We don't relish it. We chant like material name. Just like Prabhupada would often say that, you can go on chanting Hare Krishna for a long time. So someone challenged him, well, what if I want to say Coca-Cola? So Prabhupada said, you can say Coca-Cola, and then when you retire, you can chant Hare Krishna. And the devotees go, Haribo. But I'm like, forget Coca-Cola. Hare Krishna itself gets tiring. And we want to give that up also, isn't it? That is the nature of it, because we're in Maya, the ignorance of Maya. So in any case, Binna Viruddha Dharma, that's what I'm trying to describe here. There's these opposing characteristics. So the opposing characteristics, God in his impersonal feature has no qualities, and God in his personal feature has supernatural qualities. And we in our finite position only have access to the natural qualities, name, form, and so on. So when we negate the natural names, form, qualities, activities, we at best usually come to an impersonal conclusion. God can't be this, the material stuff, so he must be impersonal. That's the conclusion we reach. And then we deny the possibility of the supernatural, or there's a tendency for that. So in this way, the argumentation is going on. So the impersonalists will say, God is matter, right? That is the meaning of Maya Vada. So the adoption is that everything is Maya, basically. Bhagavan's form is Maya, his name is Maya. Everything with him is Maya. and only Brahman is true. So they will say that, and then devotees will come and argue with them. No, God has supernatural Narup Guna Lila. But they're actually talking about the same reality. But that reality, Ekastayur, so there's only one reality they're speaking about. Binna Viruddha Dharmano, but they appear to have different characteristics because of the path that you've taken to realize it. Just like another example, Kapila Muni gives in third canto, very nice example. He says, suppose you're drinking milk, you're taking the milk, but you try to understand milk with a particular sense, then you get a different understanding of it. By looking at milk, you get one understanding. By hearing the word milk, you get another understanding. By smelling the milk, another understanding. By tasting the milk, another understanding. By touching the milk, another understanding. So suppose if all the sins were separated and they had to describe what milk was, they would give a totally different understanding. But actually, they're describing the same thing. Yeah, it's a very helpful analogy. I also like it. Kapila Muni says this. So in the same way, actually only one subject matter is there, that is God. That is the only subject matter, really. But Prabhupada translated the word Binna Viruddha Dharmanos due to the material qualities. So due to the material qualities, we don't have access to the transcendence. So we're getting confused. Or Sri Vishwanath is taking Binna Viruddha Dharmanaho to refer to the difference between the impersonal and personal feature of God, of Advaya Gyan consciousness. So therefore, they're arguing. Okay, next verse. So, Avekshitam Kenchana Yoga, so this line we've already heard. They're perceiving it either through yoga or Sankhya. So, if they see it through yoga, means Bhakti Yoga here. They say Bhagavan. They see it through Gyan, called as Sankhya here. They say Brahman. And that way they're fighting. So, Samam Param Yanukunam Prahatat. Actually, Samamparam, it is the same transcendence that they're speaking about. Anukulam Brihat Tat. Brihat Tat means God, the ultimate cause. He is a shelter for both. Prabhupada's translation here. Ultimately, however, both parties demonstrate the absolute truth because though they offer opposing statements, their object is the same cause, Samamparam. They are both approaching the same Supreme Brahman, to whom I offer my respectful obeisances. So these are very nice verses this is why argumentation is considered one of the Prajalpas. Now, having said that, our acharyas do a lot of argumentation also. Siddhanta, what is that? Siddhanta Bali Chitta Nakara Alas. Kaviraj Goswami says one should not be lazy in discussing the Siddhanta. Just because it's controversial, that's like the subtext. Because he says it at the end of the second chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So he's trying to make a case that Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, the non-dual absolute reality. So that's very controversial because everyone experienced Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a saint at best, maybe as a madman for some of the materialistic persons. And for those who are a little bit learned, okay, saintly person, but God himself, Krishna himself, that. So for Gaudiyas to come out and say that boldly is extremely controversial in their time, especially. Nowadays, not so controversial because there's so many avatars coming up from all over the place. But that time, people had a little bit more strict standard of if you're going to be an avatar. So he's made this whole case for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being Krishna himself. And then he ends the chapter by saying, don't be lazy to just argue the Siddhanta, because your mind will become attached to Krishna. So you have to see that part. If you have to engage in some argumentation, how is your mind becoming attached to the absolute truth? So otherwise it is a type of prajalpa. So Srila Thakur Bhaktivinoda, he mentions, have you read this book, Bhakti Aloka? You've read this book? Bhakti Aloka is, it's not actually a book that he wrote. There are 12 essays taken from his what is that? Sajjana Toshini magazine that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur printed. So he printed 12 essays on verses 2 and 3 of Upadeshamrita. So our devotees have gathered those essays, put it in one book. They call it as Bhakti Aloka. So he has one essay on Prajalpa, very nice essay. Beautiful. This book is really like, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's insights are amazing, you know. When you read that book, you realize I'm not even a sadhaka. You just, every essay, you're just like, okay, maybe try the next one. It's a little embarrassing. So there, when he talks about Prajalpa, he mentions about 8 types of Prajalpa, major categories: gossip, blasphemy, worldliness, and debate. And argumentation is one of them. So he says argumentation, it exhausts the mind's potency. In other words, he said argumentation comes from the desire for conquest, and it exhausts the mind's potency. So, but at the same time, when you have to establish some conclusion, that means a little argumentation has to happen also. So like now in the community, it'll be like the fall, no fall, for example. So that argumentation or bhakti is inherent or not inherent, for example. We were talking about that yesterday a little bit here. So argumentation will go on because if you have to establish some conclusion, there has to be argumentation. But then you have to see if the mind is getting attached to Krishna or if the desire for conquest is becoming more on top. There should be a ratio there in your heart. You should have a little bit of intuition about the ratio in your heart, what's going on. If there's more on the side of conquest, not going to help. Then that will lead into other things like blasphemy and aparad and so on. But you're attached to Krishna, you just want to know the truth and you're having some, that is okay. Whenever you have to establish any conclusion, there has to be some fighting. So in India, they're very good at this, where they don't fight with each other physically like the Middle Eastern traditions. Middle Eastern traditions are out of control. Kill. Do you accept? No, kill them. In India, they were able to live together somehow. I don't know what was allowed for that level of diversity without just total. I mean, I'm sure there was something also periodically, but for the most part, but in their writings, they will fight a lot. In their writings, they fight a lot with the other groups. I say this group is nonsense because of this. These groups are ignorant, whatever. Because if you have to establish some conclusion, there has to be some fighting. But otherwise, this fighting is not very useful because actually everyone's talking about the same reality only from different angle of vision according to their subjective achievement. So we should have enough empathy to understand that. But I said this recently in light of what was going on politically in the world, that if you are actually in the superior subjective position, then you should technically be able to empathize with the person in a lower subjective position because you can see where they're coming from, because you have the higher vantage point. And therefore, why would you impress your position upon them when they don't have that vantage point to appreciate where you're coming from? But you have the vantage point to see where they're coming from. So the very fact that people keep fighting with each other means that they're on the same level, actually. And they're not able to appreciate the vantage point the other side is coming from. So they don't have any empathy. Otherwise, if you're having the superior subjective position, you can easily empathize. But you see, yeah, I can see why they're saying that actually makes sense from where they're standing. They're standing on level 1, so it looks like this. But I'm standing on level 2, so it looks a little bit different from up here. So that, capacity should be cultivated. Because one reality is only being discussed, the non-dual consciousness. So I guess the sadhus, I don't want to say the real sadhus, is not the right way to put it. But yeah, like a sadhu ethic is mona. They're quiet a lot of times because what can you say when someone is if they're on a lower subjective position, not in like a judgy way, then you can't really say anything unless they're inquisitive. Then they're opening their heart to hear, and that you may have a higher subjective vantage point, and I'm going to hear that. But aside from that, then what is the point of having argumentation about that? Because people are standing in their plane of experience and so on. So it's, what more can you really say to that? So therefore, they're just happy if the sadhus smile at them. They're like, yeah, he believes exactly what I think. And the sadhu is just going, yeah. Well, what can he say? So anyway, there's nice verses here. I like these prayers, Hamsagurya prayers. Next verse. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is inconceivably opulent, who is devoid of all material names, forms, and pastimes, and who is all-pervading, is especially merciful to the devotees who worship his lotus feet. So Yaha, who, so Yaha means who, means referring to the personality of Godhead. He is Anama Rupa Bhagavanananta. So Anama Rupa means he has no name or form. That's what it literally means. He has no name or form. And this, you know how Gaudiya Acharyas, we say this is a negation of the material name and form. He has no material name and form because he has spiritual name and form. He is Bhagavan Ananta. So Bhagavan means having the six opulence, and Ananta means an infinite reality, right? So Anugrahartam Bhajatam Padamulam. So Anugraha Artam, for the purpose of compassion, Bhajatam Padamulam, to those who do his bhajan, who worship his lotus feet, that Supreme Lord who has no name, material name or form, and who is infinite, Namani Rupani Charjama Karmabir. He manifests name, form, birth, and activities. Bheje. Namani Rupani Charjama Karmabir Bheje. He manifests, Bheje means to manifest, his supernatural name, form, actions, and birth. And reciprocation with his devotees, right? Because what was the previous verse saying? That it is actually only one reality that is being discussed, right? And they're arguing. This one's saying it, but the Lord reciprocates with his devotees. And so he's manifesting the spiritual, supernatural, stuff, Nam-Rup Guna Lila, and reciprocation with his devotees. So Samayam Parama Prasidatu. So he's praying, may that Supreme Lord be merciful to me, be kind to me. In other words, it looks here that Daksha's offering the Hamsa-Guhya prayers, but it looks like the Hamsa-Guhya prayers is saying, acknowledging, although there is only one reality that is being ultimately discussed, I am directing my consciousness to that personal reality, because I need reciprocation. Particularly for Daksha, he's trying to populate the cosmos, right? He was doing the work of population. That's why he's called Daksha. He got to sex life, but he wasn't producing enough children. He needed empowerment. So something impersonal not going to reciprocate with you. Right? Nothing impersonal reciprocate. So even when he's directing his energy towards the personal future, because there's need for reciprocation. There's need for redemption. Or redemption doesn't apply here, but I'm giving it as an example. When the soul needs redemption, it is, something impersonal can't redeem you. You certainly won't feel that way, at least. What is the use of offering prayer if it's not heard? If you don't feel that it can be heard? And if it can be heard, God must have some sort of ear, right? Okay, it must be a supernatural ear. It is not a normal ear, it is a supernatural ear, but it must have an ear. Otherwise, how is he hearing your prayer? How will you feel confident? He's offering prayer now, right? Prayer is being offered. So that means you want someone to hear the prayer. Something impersonal isn't going to hear the prayer. So he's saying, although acknowledging all these aspects are God himself, I'm directing toward the personal feature because I'm in need of reciprocation. I'm in need of empowerment. And in many of our stories, as the case would be, we'll be in need of so many things: redemption, mercy. So therefore, you who are without material name and form, out of compassion, anugraha, who is there who is not in need of anugraha? So something impersonal is not going to have the anugraha. Anugraha means mercy. So he needs the mercy because he's looking for empowerment. So you manifest your spiritual qualities for your devotees. So I'm also asking for some quality of yours, mainly the quality to have children. Samayam paramaprasidatu. So therefore you should be pleased with me. Sorry, I'll read the rest of the translation here. So the Supreme Lord, who is inconceivable, opulent, who is devoid of all material names, forms, and pastimes, and who is all-pervading, is especially merciful to the devotees who worship his lotus feet. Thus he exhibits transcendental forms and names of his different pastimes. May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose form is eternal and full of knowledge and bliss, be merciful to me. Okay. This is the last verse, I think. Yeah, verse 34. This verse, honestly, I didn't really get. Prabhupada was quoting, Sri Vishnu was saying that some people, they worship themselves as God. They see the jiva as God himself or as a manifestation of God. And so that is also acknowledged. That is also acknowledged because the jiva is also God. Matter is also God. Jiva is also God. He's not God in his swarup, but he is part of God. Therefore, he's also God. But the identity is asymmetrical. So that is the part that people don't get usually. I also didn't get it. Somehow when I read the book, Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, 18 years of age, I read the book. And then out of reading that book, I also thought I was God. I don't know how I got that from a Buddhist book, but I thought I was, because they don't believe in God, right? So I don't know how I got that concept. But from reading the book, I also got the concept that I'm a part of God, therefore I'm God. That's what my thinking was like this, which is true, but it's asymmetrical and not symmetrical. Otherwise, I wouldn't be suffering in this material world. So this is also accepted here. The jivas are the Supreme Lord. I didn't get the flow of this last verse here exactly, but the commentary was coming like this. So it says here, Yapakriter Gyanapatar Jananam Yatashayam Deha Gato Vibhati Yatanila Partivim Ashrito Gunam Sa Ishuro Me Kurutam Manoratam. As the air carries various characteristics of the physical elements, like the aroma of a flower or colors, resulting from a mixture of dust in the air, the Lord appears through lower systems. Okay, let's look at that real quick. So this is a translation of the line, Yatanila Partivim, Ashritogunam. So you know the ether is the most subtle element, right? And then from ether has the quality of sound. And then there comes air with the quality of touch, and then fire with the quality of form, and then water with the quality of taste, and then earth with the quality of scent or smell, right? Gandha. So air is way up here, subtle, right? With the quality of touch. And earth is down here, grossest element with the quality of scent. So Yatanila is staying here, just like the air, Partivim Asritoguna, will take shelter of a quality of the earth. So for example, when the air passes through flowers, it will pick up some scent. And you smell the scent. So that scent is the quality of the earth. It's not the quality of the air. But you'll say the air smells good. Isn't it? So what you're doing is you're basically superimposing a grosser element onto a subtler element. You said the air is smelling good. Very nice. So in the same way, we're superimposing our jivahood onto the Godhead and saying we are God. So just like that, yatani la partivim asritoguna. So that is okay. That is also okay. If you say the air smells good, no one's going to find fault with you, right? So if you say the jiva is God, depending on how you're thinking about that, there is no problem in that also, right? There is no problem in that. But you should know that scent is the quality of the earth and not the quality of the air. So similarly, you should know there is actually a distinction between jiva and the Supreme Lord, Purusha. And those differences were already indicated in the beginning of the Hamsagulya prayers. But in any case, so just like that, just like we superimpose this grosser element onto the subtle, so similarly, Yapakriter Jnana Pataya Janana, I'll read the rest of the translation. So as the air carries various characteristics of the physical elements, like the aroma of a flower or colors resulting from a mixture of dust in the air, the Lord appears through lower systems of worship according to one's desires. Although he appears as the demigods and not in his original form. So Yapakriter Gyanapatar Jananam Yatashtayam Deha Gato Vibhati. So the Lord, so just like this, air is being seen, the scent is being seen as part of the air quality. So similarly, the Lord, Yaha, the Lord, he manifests in the heart of people, yata ashayam, according to the desire. What type of people? Janana means the different people. What type of people? The people who follow the path of Gyan. And Pakritai means like unrefined, or like Prabhupada translated here is like the lower path. The idea here is that they're following some path of Jnana, and they're seeing the devatas, or maybe they're seeing themselves as manifestations of Brahman or God. So that is also accepted. Just like you're saying that the air is smelling good. So you're saying that the Brahman is manifesting as devatas, or he's manifesting as your very self, and people who worship themselves. So that is also okay. That is also okay. But sa Ishvara me kurutam manoratam. He's saying here, but may that Ishvara, what is the use of these other forms? That's Prabhupada's adding that there. May the original personality of God please fulfill my desires. Sa Ishvara me kurutam manoratam. So may he, the Ishvara, whoever he is, he's saying like this, that, the other. Okay, all these conceptions are, whoever he is, may he fulfill my desire. Kurutam manoratam. So I'm offering prayer to that Supreme Lord, whoever he may be. Some people are saying like this, some people are saying like that. I'm offering my prayer to that Supreme Lord, may he fulfill my desire. So my desire, of course, is to have children, lots of them. So not very high desire, but may you reciprocate with that desire. So whoever you are, may you reciprocate with that. I like these prayers because they're a little technical, but I like them because they're not many verses. It's like a succinct discussion about God, not so much about engaged talking about God, even to a secular audience. You know, God is existence himself, and you know, he has these different aspects. Actually, all these aspects are God according to your subjective. Like, I kind of appreciate that. Like, if you sit with these sort of prayers nicely, then when you're having a conversation with a more secular mind about what is God, then these verses give a lot of insight how you logical and not just the concept of sky, you know, some natural entity that's a little bit better than us, but still a creature of nature. No, he's not a creature of nature. He's existence. He's before nature itself, the basis of nature. So I like these prayers for this reason, and how it points out how we argue because of our different subjective position. And it's very nice. So Daksha is praying for this thing, and he'll get it. We'll see how he's reciprocated just coming up. So we're going to stop there. His prayers are finished. Tomorrow we'll start reading on the rest of the chapter. I might just read a lot of the passage because it may not be something super significant. I think this is the last verse of the prayers. Yeah, it is. Now Shukadeva Goswami is going to speak next. Okay, let's see. Looks like there's something in the chat box. It seems that in Bhagavad Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami says, Asti Iti refers to those yogis who worship the Virat Rupa, saying all names and forms belong to God. Asti, maybe I didn't see the Bhagavad Sandarbha. Was this particular verse the one referenced? Because it did look familiar, but I couldn't make out if it was coming there. In any case, Asti Iti, all these forms who worship the Virat Rupa, that was already mentioned a few verses before also. So that's a possibility. And Sri Vishnu's commentary, he's taking it as the Brahman and Bhagavan feature. So the yogis here means the bhaktas. So they say God's transcendental form exists. And the Brahmavadis, they say it doesn't. Or not maybe Brahmavadis or the impersonalists. They say not Isti is not there, because they see only Brahman feature without qualities. So through the path of Sankhya or Gyan path. So Binna Viruddha Dharmana. So the personal and impersonal features have different qualities or opposing qualities. Impersonalism and personalism have a opposition is there. So that's how Sri Vishnu is taken, and Prabhupada's purpose following his. So I didn't see any Bhagavad Sundara statement there, but that is also as it was also mentioned earlier. Can you explain how Krishna appears as demigods? The last but one line in the translation. Yeah, so you know how in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 9, verse 15, let's look up that verse. How shall Bhagavad Gita, probably not that good, right? When the last time we remember Bhagavad Gita? Chapter 9, verse 15, Krishna mentions about this Gyan Yoga path there. Oh, yeah, 9:15. Gyana Yagnena, he says there. Gyana Yagnena Chapyanye Yajanto Mamupasate. Eko Twena Pratap Twena Bahudo Vishuto Mukha. So at this point, Krishna is described himself, chapter 9. So in verses 4 through 11, 4 through 10, he describes himself as he understands himself. Then verse 11, 12, he describes how the atheist looks at him and their results. And in verse 13, 14, how the Bhakta sees him. And then this verse, he says, those who do the Jnana Yagya, they either see them, well, Ekatvena Prataktvena, Bahudo Vishwatomukha. So they either see Ekatvena, they see themselves as one with God, or Prataktvena. Prataktvena means, Prabhupada translated here, in duality, and it means the Devatas. They see the Devatas as manifestations of Brahman, and they worship the Devatas in that way. Or Bahudo Vishwatomukha, they see the universe. They see the universe as a manifestation of Brahman. So these are those who do the Jnana Yagya. In verses 16 through 20, Krishna will expand on that a little bit more. And then starting with verse 20, it talks about people who worship the Devatas as independent deities. So there are two types of Devata worshippers. Those who see the Devatas as manifestations of Brahman through Jnana Yagya. So by that Jnana Yagya, they can get liberation. And then those who the Devatas separate deities. So they're karmis. So they say in the material world. So the last verse is saying that someone sees God, the jiva, as a manifestation of God. So worshiping Samadhi, they say everything is Brahman. The Lado is Brahman, the Gi is Brahman, the priest is Brahman, the sponsor is Brahman. How they say, because Brahman, Karma, Samadhi, their Samadhi, their mind is that everything is a manifestation of Brahman. So as they're moving around the world, they're moving around in Brahman. So thinking of Brahman, they go to Brahman. So here they're worshiping Devatas, seen as manifestations of Brahman. So with that in their mind, they will go to Brahman. This is the idea. This is called Jnana Yagya. But others, they see the deities as separate entities. So they stay in the material world. So there's a place for that. Ekatvena here means you see yourself as manifestation of Brahman. So you worship in that way. So that was given some allowance also. So Krishna is he perfectly reciprocates with the nature of the approach, right? That is because he has access to the subjective realm of all souls. Just like we were celebrating Gaur Purnima. And Gaur Purnima, Krishna wants to understand love from the subjective position. Because he's the object of love, Vishaya Vigraha, but he wants to understand it from the subjective position. So he has that power where he can know things from the subjective position of the person. So in the material world, there's always some tension is there because we never know the subjective position of the other perfectly. We can only at best intuit it, right? So there's so much tension comes up because of that, isn't it? I wanted you to do this. How come you didn't do that? You should have known my desire. I'm making a joke here with Shay and Sri Govinda, but they were doing this morning. They were doing some pastime because of not having access to the other person's subjectivity. That's why even when you suffer, all of us end up basically suffering alone. We can share our heart with others and they can empathize with us. but they can never know exactly what we're going through subjectively. So there can never be perfect reciprocation. But Krishna doesn't have that limitation. So he can know exactly what's going on subjectively. So he can reciprocate perfectly. So someone is worshiping him as a Brahmin, seeing himself as Brahmin, seeing Devatas as Brahmin, seeing the universe as Brahmin. He can, so where that he reciprocates, so you can get liberation. So that is from chapter 9 Bhagavad Gita, speaking about that. You can get the liberation if you have that meditation you're holding in your mind. So there's some amounts for that also. But if you think that the jiva is himself God, so you after Krishna or the deity, I'll give him up because that is Maya only. So Krishna also reciprocates with that. And you see Maya. He's a perfect reciprocator. So if you think it's Maya, you get to stay in Maya. You think God is a universe, he reciprocates with that also. So he's a universe and you get a universe. But if you think the universe is a Brahman and you hold it down in that, then you can go to Brahman. So in this way, that's why Krishna is the only perfect object of love. Everyone else will give frustration at the end of the day. Because we must actually frustrate each other by dint of our finitude. We must be frustrated to each other. Why can't you understand what I'm, thinking, what I'm saying, what I'm feeling? Because I'm not you. It's a deep. Yeah. So the Bhagavad Gita verse is a really good reference for that sort of question. Okay. Any thoughts anyone wants to ask before we sign off for today? Okay. Shamsaki says, heard many times, but when I heard today, made more sense. The example of a spider making a web and not get entangled in it, and does all Leela in the same web. Yeah, that's a nice example. Bhagavatam. The universe is coming from God. So Bhagavatam is an example, like spider is making the web and it comes from inside of him. But it's different from him and he can play around in it. And so like that, the world is coming from the Lord and he can also play around in that. Somebody was speaking, yeah. Okay, so we'll stop here for today. We'll continue the reading tomorrow. Thank you all very much. I'll see you. I see you. Ariyo Tassat. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Yo Premanandi, Hari Hari Bolo.